Hello, and welcome to the Mr. Murka the Bearded Tree Show. I am Jason Lyon. Thank you for joining in. I appreciate you guys all. If you guys could bear with me, I am trying to. I'm using new equipment. I'm using a new platform, and so because of that, we may be going through some technical difficulties. But please do bear with me, and we will get through this, and hopefully be able to produce a better show for you in the future. Thank you guys all for joining in once again. It is Friday night. Normally we would be at 7 p.m. Eastern, but tonight we have a special occasion, and we're doing the show now at 6 p.m. So thank you once again for joining in, and I hope you guys all have a great night tonight, and you guys enjoy. I wouldn't say enjoy, but you guys have some thoughts about what we're going to be discussing tonight. So. The first story that I wanted to talk about was actually a story that a lot of people have not been catching on to, because the news is refusing to cover this. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to have Periscope comments. Like, here, hold on, let me pull it up on my phone. So I'm using Restream, and Restream is, say the least, it's not the best of platforms in order to produce a show. There we go. All right, so I've got that up now. So over the weekend, I believe over the last week, there was a news report that came out back on the 11th. Huffington Post wrote an article about this. There was a New York man who built a 200-pound bomb to detonate on the election day. This was thwarted by the authorities, and it's not being covered at all. Now, I don't have a problem with them not covering the individual, or where he's from, his age, or anything else, because he's a crazy loony person, and they deserve no respect. They deserve nothing with regards to becoming a hero. But what we need to do is we need to actually notice. We actually need to put this on notice that something tragic was going to occur, and it was thwarted. So a 200-pound bomb, that is obviously a bomb that would be creating a substantial amount of damage to those around. The individual who created this bomb was also planning to kill themselves with said bomb. The reason for wanting to blow up a bomb like this on election day was to push their own political view that we should be going into what is called sortition. Now, sortition is an ancient political system that actually was utilized in ancient Athens, and it's an idea of a random political system, essentially. So what it is basically you have a pool of people, and you say, all right, we're going to pick a random person out of this grouping, and that is going to be the next elected official. This may sound good, this may sound bad, this may sound interesting, but it's not a practice that's not practiced. It is utilized a lot in our court systems now when we go through in for example, picking out jurors for a trial. We have a group of people, a group of individuals that have been selected. They went through a line of questioning, and now you have this pool of people that are acceptable, and from them are the people that are selected. In some essence, yes, they're not random. Oftentimes, prosecutors or defendants will be looking to use the demographics around surrounding the different people in order to try to build up their case, whether it's in their defense or for the aggressive side of things. And so, but the gist of it is that these are all random people, and you're selecting from them, and so they're all people that would be acceptable for the roles that are being deemed, right? You're not just going to pick you're not going to put a hobo who has no qualifications, no education, knows nothing of the system, and decide that he's going to be within this pool. There's actually a system in place that's going to ensure that everyone that is within the pool of candidates for a government would be acceptable, and then you pick a random person within this. This one of the biggest positive attributes of this is that it gets away from the factions. This gets away from the duopoly that we have here in America, where it really is the Democrats versus the Republicans. Which party are you more in favor of? Which party do you want to see be successful? And so it says, look, there's no parties now. Now we're just going to take a bunch of random people that have fulfilled the minimum requirements in order to become an elected official, and then at random, one of them gets elected. So it's just about finding people that are good people that are eligible. They get into the pool, and they get selected at random. And then you have a possibility of having a more favorable or a less favorable government because of that. But it's less about the democracy. It's less about the idea that mob rule gets to control, right? The majority of people get to control the minority of people. And so this is an ideology, right? Sortition, as a political system, is an ideology that there are people still to this day that obviously advocate for it. And that was the whole entire purpose of having this bomb, blowing it up in Washington, D.C. On Election Day was the plan. So I found it interesting because of that. You got Brunson. Wait, what? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what you were referencing to. And so it's just disheartening that this was not something that was discussed more. That we had a major catastrophic situation being being thwarted by the authorities, and no one wanted to talk about it. So this was actually a time in which we can say, yes, the authorities heard something, somebody reported it, and they did something. Thank you for saving the lives of many innocent Americans. Man, it's beautiful. So I just wanted to start off with that, and then there's two big controversies that are going on right now. One of them is at the helm of CNN, Don Lemon. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen the headlines, seen the reports on just how disgusting, how atrocious Don Lemon and his panel are, because they made references. They made a Chris Rock reference and a Dave Chappelle reference while sitting on a panel for Don Lemon. A lot of people are going after Don Lemon. I don't think it's his fault. I think that he should be working better to find better people on his show. But I don't think that he should be fired for it. But one of the references was that Kanye West is basically effectively dumb, and because he's dumb, it's because he's one of those Negroes that doesn't read. I think it's truly despicable. It's reprehensible that people believe that just because you don't agree with somebody else, then that means you don't read, that you're not a smart individual, that yada yada yada, right? We can all say, look, somebody disagrees with me, they haven't read the books that I've read, and so we have to have some disparaging words about them. I disagree with that idea. We can disagree. We don't have to mock each other. We don't have to just degrade ourselves, degrade civility in that manner, and act as if it's okay. It's not. It's simply not okay. Especially in this era right now, in this time in which we have a lot of people, mostly on the Democratic side, falling victim to exactly what the title is. When we go low, we find ways of going even lower. When Hillary Clinton went out and she was on a discussion, I apologize for forgetting which media source she was on for an interview, but she said to the likes of basically, we can't be civil until Democrats come to power. Master CP, welcome in, man. We can't be civil until the Democrats come into power. So she's taken this very authoritarian stance in which we are not to be civil. We are not to be accepting of others. We are to attack others. We are to harass. We are to belittle. We are to diminish. We are to do whatever it takes in order to vilify a political opponent. It's not about being honest. It's not about trying to better the situation. It's just about throwing a temper tantrum because you lost an election and you don't like the repercussions from this. It's amazing that we're getting this from two. Thank you. It's that we're getting this from two people from the Obama administration, in which President Obama himself said, "Look, you guys don't like it. Elections have consequences." That somehow is a standard of conduct, a way of thinking that is lost upon Democrats now. Now what it is they have to cry. They have to become unhinged, hysterical, violent. And they think that that's going to make America a better place. They think that that's going to make it a more prosperous, a more loving, a more unified country. And truly, right now, there's no way of bringing this divide away. There's no way of making this country a better place by disregarding something such as civility. Now, we can get into the civility idea, and we can see where the left in the recent past has absolutely denounced it, said that it's evil, said that it should not be accepted. We can go through the Maxine Waters saying, look, if you find somebody within the Trump administration, you go out and you find them at a gas station, you find them at a grocery store, you find them in a restaurant, and you harass them and you tell them they're not welcome here. They're not welcome here, right? Imagine if we were to do the same. Imagine if a Christian group who opposes Muslims went out and did the same thing. Do you think that the Democrats would sit there and denounce this? Absolutely, 100% they would. Imagine if a pro-life group went out and did this to pro-choice people, to Democrats. Do you think that the Democrats would denounce it? Absolutely they would. But when they do it, it's somehow an acceptable standard. When Nancy Pelosi says that there should be riots all across the country, she's advocating for violence. She's advocating for the destruction of property of people that is not theirs. Right? So we have two political figures in the Democratic Party still sitting today advocating for the destruction of civility. You have, as we said, Hillary Clinton saying, look, we cannot be civil until Democrats are in power. You can't be civilized against a party that stands against everything that you stand for. Which is amazing, because just on that level, right, without actually naming which party and in which way it goes, could you imagine if a Republican said the same thing? Could you imagine how that would go over? Right? CNN would say, look, the Republican Party is now a terrorist organization. But instead, they deflect it, they ignore it, and they don't. And they try to diffuse it, and they don't talk about it. They don't want to talk about the disgusting things that the Democratic Party has done, because the media as a whole is complacent and accepting of the disgusting things that the Democratic Party does. They are in favor of the bigger government, and they will do anything, and they will manipulate, they will throw guys over all of these stories in order to ensure that the people don't get to hear them. Beyond that, Eric Holder. So Michelle Obama, right, the former first lady, she came out and she said, no, when I said, when we go high, or when they go low, we go high, I meant it. And she has actually a really beautiful quote about this. She says, fear is not a proper motivator. Hope wins out. If you think you want your kid, hope wins out. And if you think about how you want your kids to be raised, how you want them to think about life and their opportunities, do you want them to be afraid of their neighbors? Do you want them to be angry? Do you want them to be vengeful? Which motto do you want them to live by? And I have to think about that as a mother, right? Thinking about the children. Could you imagine what kind of a precedent that Hillary Clinton is standing for? Don't be civil unless you get your way. Imagine how that would go through for the schools. Imagine how in an elementary school, a kid wants to go to recess during the middle of math class. And the teacher says, no, it's time for math. Do your multiplication table. And the kid says, no, I'm not going to do my multiplication table. I want it my way. I want it my way. I want to go play on the playground. I want to go play kickball. And then the kid decides, because a former Secretary of State, a former presidential candidate, a former First Lady of this country has said, I don't have to be civil. We should not be civil until we get our way. Now children are going to be accepting of that. So you have that in the elementary schools, you have that in the middle schools, and you have that in the high schools. We already know we have that in college campuses. We saw this with the Evergreen State College last year when they had a day without whites, a forceful day without whites. White people were not accepted. And when white people showed up, everyone protested and demanded that they be fired. Eric Weinstein. Go check him out if you guys have not heard about that. A day without white people. A forced day without white people. They didn't get their way. White people showed up for work to go teach the students their job. And the left became unhinged. They became uncivilized and demanded that they be fired. So we have this fundamental issue in which we have large stars within the left, hypocritical circles, large figures within the left that are calling for the unruliness, calling to destroy our civilization at the fabric. And people are accepting of this. They're tolerating this. They think that is okay, because if I disagree with you, then I can be as nasty to you as I want to. I can go and direct your traffic and ensure that you do not get where you want to go because I'm not getting my way. If I can't get my way, you can't get yours. So Michelle Obama comes out with that quote and says, no, when they go low, we go high. We be above it all. We don't stoop to that level. We don't go low. Eric Holder made a response. Eric Holder, former Attorney General to President Obama, says, no, when they go low, we kick them. When they go low, we kick them. So it's just truly amazing to me the way that this is an accepted thing right now. Why is the Democratic Party accepting this repulsive view of these actions? They sit by idly and go, we don't have control over them. They're free to do as they please. Instead of denouncing it. These are the same people that say that President Trump needs to denounce people from the Charlottesville situation. I completely agree. You should be denouncing people from the Charlottesville situation. Absolutely. These are the same people that are saying this group, that group needs to be denounced, but at the same time, they refuse to denounce the actions that are happening around them. They're actual racists. Yes, absolutely. I agree with you, Hermit. The Democratic Party is full of racists. I completely agree with you. The bigotry of the soft bigotry of low expectations. One great quote, but it's truly is the truth around that. It's the basis behind a lot of their views. is that they can't hold people. They say, look, minorities have been oppressed, and so we are going to maintain low standards for them, and we're going to ensure that the low standards are now their goals. Are now their goals. You maintain low standards, and that's all that we want from you. Instead of saying, hey, you are capable of maintaining the same standards as anyone else. I don't care of your gender. I don't care of your race. I don't care about anything about you. I know that you are a human being and you're just as capable as anyone else. But instead, they say you can't. So yes, I agree with you 100%. The Democratic Party is 100% a party that is so hyper-focused on race. But we see all of these call to actions from different members of the Democratic Party. And the rest of the Democratic Party sits idly by. It's I know why it is, and listening to even Republicans talk about things that are going wrong within the Republican Party, such as what Thomas Massey says on the Swamp podcast, is that if you don't toe the party line, there are staffers that will come and harass you. There are other members of Congress that will harass you. So you can't speak out. If you speak out, you lose your committee seats. You lose your funding. You lose your campaigns. You lose a lot of things if you speak out against what the party thinks is acceptable. So here's a good comment from the Evergreen State College thing. Who cares one day without whites? How long have we been pushing other races out of schools, etc.? So no, it's never been acceptable, right? Not after the Jim Crow era, right? It's never been acceptable to tell somebody, look, because of your race, you're not accepted here. You cannot come to school. You cannot come to work. You cannot come here. You cannot come there, right? That is racist. And so for people to say it's one day in which white people are not allowed to come, and then people are harassed and threatened with violence, I think that you accepting that as tolerable just shows that you are not paying attention to how hatred works, how segregation works, how it's not a tolerable thing, especially in 2018. It needs to stop. Yes, Hermit, fantastic point. Divide and conquer. Meanwhile, $22 trillion in debt and endless wars. Yes, well, the wars that will continue on for forever because we have no objective standard to get out of them. We have no reason to remain there. We are sitting here idly by, waiting for a sign from God to fix this. It's just not going to happen. Columbus killed and raped natives, and yes, yet we celebrate him. So you're oh my word! I'm not even gonna go down your rabbit trail, all right? Because I realize like you want to stick in the past and you want to say, look, in the past these horrible things happened, and so we have to create more atrocities today in order to somehow equalize this, in order to make this an acceptable living condition for people. And that's just beyond logic. That's disgusting that you think that an atrocity of yesterday means that we have to have an atrocity of today, and somehow the two atrocities will negate each other. That's disgusting. Like, let's be honest. Divisive indoctrination. Exactly. So we're seeing this, and I really would love just for members of the Democratic Party to step out and call out the members of their own party that are doing this, and say, no, this is a time that we become civil. This is a time in which we had Rand Paul being attacked by his neighbor, having 6 broken ribs because his neighbor didn't like his views. This is a time in which Steve Scalise was almost killed, along with plenty of other Republican members of Congress. Like, being shot because of your political views. Like, this is a time in which both parties should be calling for civility, saying, look, we need to find a way in order to unite the country, to remove the hatred, remove the divisiveness. And instead, what we have are people sitting around idly by, allowing this to flourish, allowing this to continue. It needs to stop, and we need to end it. It's disgusting. I realize my logo is a little bit blurry, so I'm going to blow it up for y'all a little bit. Hopefully that'll be more visible for you guys. My prediction for the midterms. So what we're going to be seeing in the midterms, I really think that because of the recent events, because of these calls for civility to be removed by Eric Holder, by Maxine Waters, by Nancy Pelosi, by Hillary Clinton, I think that that's going to be swinging some votes in favor of the Republicans. I think that's really going to energize the base. That's going to energize the Republican base, and energize the Trump supporting base. So we're going to see a little bit more enthusiasm out of the Republicans when it comes to the House. In the Senate, I've been pretty much for the last like 3 or 4 months, I've been saying that the Senate is going to be going in favor of the Republicans. I don't know how many seats they're going to gain, but I would be aghast if they lost seats during this. I really don't see that going in their way. Would not be an atrocity to replace the holiday. So I think that we should certainly be celebrating how our country became, and that is obviously Columbus. Whether he's a good person or not, I think that's not what we should be celebrating. We should be celebrating the fact that he found it, or not founded it, but he was certainly a spark of interest that helped enable our country to become what it is. The auction starts tomorrow. What's up with the voter suppression? So voter suppression is a big talking point that comes out, and it's really discussed by both sides against the other sides every election. Whatever the Dems say, do the opposite. Life would be much better then. It's a often used talking point. I will answer your question in 1 second, Hermit. I hope you're not getting a green screen, are you? That's crazy. He stole land. He didn't steal land. So it wasn't Christopher Columbus just came in and stole all this land, right? Here's a common misconception when it comes to how America was founded, right? A lot of people say, look, the whites came in and they stole all this land. What's amazing is that if you look at the Native American tribes and the way that the Native American tribes were functioning and surviving in the lands, they were not amicable with each other. They were not peaceful to each other. Oftentimes they were fighting over the rivers, they were fighting over the lakes, they were fighting over the hills, they were fighting over the lands, they were fighting over the herds, they were fighting over everything. And they were violent against each other. And it was only whenever they had a new opponent enter the arena, metaphorically speaking, that some of the tribes actually came together to work together. And so you had this giant arena that was North America, and you had basically a civil war, everyone against each, not a civil war, but a battle royale in which every party was fighting against other parties. They all standalones, and the whites came in and they joined in on this battle, and they wanted to take some land. Absolutely, that was one of the core values, right? The manifest destiny and whatnot. And so they came in, they started fighting, and yes, it was disgusting. It was disgusting when the whites were killing natives. It was disgusting when the natives were killing the whites. It was disgusting when the natives were killing the natives. It was disgusting when the whites killed the whites. It was disgusting, however it goes. But there's this postmodern view of how that all played out, and they're trying to say, look, all of the Native Americans were sitting there and they were picking the berries, they were picking the fruit, they were growing their corn, and they were just happy, and they were eating the animals, and no one had any issues, and the whites came in and just set the entire country aflame. There's really not too much honesty when it comes to people making claims like that. but it's beyond that, beyond like the truths behind what was occurring there. People act as if that is a crucial and important thing of today. Now, I'm not saying that Native Americans are treated well even by today's standards. The federal government has an extreme grasp over them, and we've covered this in previous discussions. But to act as if the land was entirely stolen when the land was fought over and won by one side, you don't really get to say, look, this was our land, because even they were not holding this land for an appreciable amount of time. Yes, that is true. The Indians were killed off by a lot of the European diseases. History was written by the winners. So, and now you have losers trying to rewrite it. Oh man, I'm sorry. It needed to be. It needed to be said. So, I think the longer we get away from that, the less impact of the actions of the past really are affecting us of today. Sure, there are still atrocities that are happening today, like I mentioned, but hyper focusing on the past and being like, this person shouldn't be accepted, this person shouldn't be looked at, is just disgusting. So the question was, do you think it's too late for civil society to recover without violence? Paper tiger question, but relevant to me as another human being down here. It is. Yeah. I don't think that we could just stop today and all become civil again. I think that there's too much of a divide that's already been created. I think that the Civil War has already been being fought on a mostly non-violent level. But I think violence is definitely going to be on the upsurge. I think it's going to be continuing on. I think when one side is really advocating for it and fighting to ensure that we remain uncivilized, it's just calling for more violence. It's going to occur. We're going to see more bombs, like what I was referring, or what we had discussed earlier in the show. More bombs like that are going to be being built, and both sides going to blame the other sides, because Democrats, when they call for this stuff and violent actions happen and destruction happens, they won't say it's because of what I said. They're going to say, no, it's because of the Republicans and their views. And the Republicans are going to say, no, it's because of what you said. And so it's just going to create a bigger divide, and it's just gone bad. Trump supports the white supremacy, and you're against hate. So now I'm a Trump supporter? That's beautiful. My ancestors sold this land, and to them, land ownership was part of the law, so they enjoyed the free goods. People who blame white people have no clue. Two wrongs do not make a right. The native raiders were bashing babies against trees. Human nature is universally cruel. So pretenses about hippie natives is not true. Tough to go back now. Yes, it's extremely tough to go back now, especially when you have Antifa rampaging in towns and cities and causing hypocrisy, but hysteria in the streets, and that's not being denounced. When you have members of different big organizations like Black Lives Matter going out there and protesting against things that were justified just because they didn't like the way the outcome came. When you have people going in and slandering politicians or slandering people because they don't like the way that things are going, or because they don't like this or that about a person, and so they will make dishonest assertions about people in order just to get their way. We can see, like, go read through any news feed of an honest, unbiased media source, and you will see just of how disgusting these groups are. These people on here are so full of hate. It's terrible. I agree. GOP also incite violence. It's you misspelled incite, but GOP. I would love evidence that the GOP is inciting violence beyond Trump, right? So I agree that Trump has said some things and it is absolutely disgusting and reprehensible, and I've denounced them every time that they've been brought up. But apart from President Trump, there's really nothing out there that the GOP is really endorsing violent actions or violent rhetoric. But we can see where I can point you to recent speeches, recent discussions in which civility is not being called for. Antifa is incredibly small. BLM at its core is nonviolent. So the problem is that not how big the size is, right? Antifa is a growing movement. It's been continuing to grow. It's a group that started off in Germany and Britain, and their idea is terrorism. Right? The idea is that they're going to vilify people, justify punching Nazis, and who they deem as Nazis is anybody that they disagree with, anyone who stands in their way. And Antifa is actually larger than KKK. Antifa is actually larger than, it actually rivals the size of the alt-right. Now, the alt-right is not entirely an all-violent group. A lot of them are white supremacists. A lot of them are absolutely repugnant and disgusting people. Absolutely, right? But there are some members of the alt-right that are there because they think it's funny. So it's not, it's the difference between malice and stupidity. And so there are a lot of people in the alt-right that are stupid. Well, there are some people in the alt-right that are just stupid. But comparing them to the Antifa, they are about the same size. They're relatively close. And so it's amazing that people will talk and try to portray the alt-right as something bigger than what it is, and they'll say Antifa's not that big. They're actually are extreme fringe groups. Antifa, fringe left, alt-right, fringe right, if you will. That's still even a debatable view of the alt-right being a right-wing view. They utilize a lot of the tools of the left. They utilize intersectionality. They utilize an oppression system. They utilize a system of demands of everything else, of shutting down others. And so the alt-right utilizes a lot of the lefty tactics. And so I'm still not certain that they are a right-wing ideology, but regardless, they are both fringe groups and they are both rivaled in size. And so I think it's important that we do, when those discussions come up, we don't just denounce them because they're small in size, but we need to actually continue to crush them on an intellectual level, on a civil level, on the idea that these are not acceptable. It's just simply not. And then when it comes to Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter is not a mostly nonviolent group. There are plenty of people within Black Lives Matter that are violent, that actually do riot, that actually do destroy property, that actually do make threats against others. And it's not a rare occurrence for these people. It is quite common. So trying to diminish the negative things that happen with a political activist group or a political movement is not going to bode well in the ways of calling for more civility, if you will. I'm here to denounce any acts of aggression from a group, whether it's a threat, whether it's an actual act of violence against a person, whether it's against their property, or whatever it is. If you are a violent group in any way, I'm going to denounce it, because I actually stand up and I call for civility. I don't care if you're a Republican, you're a Democrat, you're a Libertarian, you're a Green Party, you're a workers' union, whatever you are. I don't care. I want you to be civil. I want you to be able to discuss your ideas with elegance, with certainty, with understanding, and with accepting that the other person may want just as good of a world that you do, but you guys differ on how you obtain the better world. And so it's things like that. If you can't be civil, if you can't espouse your ideas without making threats, without resorting to ad hominems, without diminishing the other side, without vilifying, without trying to utilize hyperbolic speech, if you can't do that, then your argument's trash. And your argument's trash, and you should feel bad. Yes, BLM is basically a black supremacy group. I agree. There are fundamental issues within BLM. There are plenty of protests in which BLM has been has been riled up and come out and spoken out against, and I agree with him on a bunch of them. But the problem was that Black Lives Matter was no longer about the facts of the situation, but just the fact that if it was an officer killing a black man or a black person, then that meant that they needed to go out and protest and riot, and that's not the way that things should work, right? We should all have we should all be waiting to see the facts. We should wait to see the entire situation before we get out there and say this was wrong, this was terrible, this was disgusting. I don't advocate for violence. I don't advocate for the murdering of others. I do advocate that people are able to defend themselves or defend the lives of others. I openly advocate for that. I'm a huge Second Amendment supporter. I'm an actual Second Amendment supporter. I don't say I support the Second Amendment, but that doesn't exist. I support the Second Amendment. I believe that all men and women in the United States of America, if you are an adult, you have the ability and the capacity in order to keep and bear arms of your choosing. Now, with that, I think that when people commit heinous crimes, for example, like a felon, if somebody commits a violent felony, and that means that they have their rights suspended or removed. When it comes to that, I think that there should be a rehabilitation process. If the rehabilitation process is deemed effective and is certified and people are signing off on that, right? You have people that are risking their careers in order to say this. Then maybe we can reinstate their rights as a society. But people should be able to defend themselves. And so when BLM says, no, it doesn't matter about the situation, it matters about the person being killed, and they don't care if the person was carrying a gun, was threatening the lives of others. They don't care if the person was threatening the cops with a weapon of opportunity, whether it is a gun, whether it's a bar, whether it's a knife. They don't care about those facts and statistics. Then they become a dishonest organization, and it really should be putting a question in people's minds. Am I going to openly advocate for a group like this that doesn't want to have an honest conversation about it? It needs to be had. I don't know anyone who's seen these fringe groups. I've actually seen members of both. BLM gets way too much blame. Another taking point, boogeyman for the... Another talking point. So I'm not saying that BLM gets way too much blame. I'm saying that BLM has destroyed their own credibility, and that's hard. I should run for office, refreshing rationality. I appreciate that. Thank you. One day I will. One day I will. It's a huge issue, right? A lot of people want to talk about these small groups, and they say, look, they're just small groups, don't talk about them. Or they say, this is a great group, or whatever the basis is, right? I don't care about why your group is formed. I don't care about who's within your group. What I care about is, does your group care about honesty? Does your group care about civility? Does your group care about facts and statistics? If your group doesn't care about that, your group is trash. And it should be denounced. It's sad that groups that are supposed to be about fighting against civil rights being violated, or civil liberties being violated, or the deaths of others, have become so politicized that it's one party is in favor of it and another party is so against it. I hate that everything in our world is becoming politicized in every aspect. You can't look at sports without seeing politics. You can't look at schools without seeing politics. You can't look at
our dinner table.
At our dinner table and without seeing politics. Politics is everywhere. And when people don't have a break from it, I've been noticing a lot more people are taking breaks from it now, or trying to, doing their best to get away from politics as much as they can. If people don't have a break from politics, that's when people become more uncivil. That's when people become more obsessed with it and become angry and violent and everything else. And my wife is looking at me like as if I am the most violent, disgusting person ever. Fantastic. I appreciate it, babe.
No. I was saying we get to take a break from politics.
No, you don't. No. Since BLM moved to Toronto, the murder rate has doubled. I can imagine, right? And BLM will cheer it on. BLM doesn't care about Black lives. BLM cares about cops and denouncing them. That's what BLM cares about. You can hear it in their chants. Oh, here, Hermit's got the chant already. What do we want? Dead cops. When do we want it? Now. BLM, right? They're there to be anti-cops. They're not there to be Black Lives Matter. And the only BLM that really matters is not Bureau of Land Management. It's not Black Lives Matter. It's actually Bearded Lives Matter. That's the only one that really matters. Is Bearded Lives Matter. So if you got a beard out there, take care of that beard. If you got a beard in your life, appreciate that beard. That's the only BLM that really does matter. I get the wife looks too. It's so when we're looking, like, getting back to a more gooder topic, if you will. When we look at like the country as a whole right now, how do we actually bring back civility? Actually, I want to go on to a different topic, because I've been involved with a lot of discussions lately, and me as a white male, I'm not allowed to have these conversations in accordance with intersectionality, in accordance with the left, in accordance with people who disagree with my ideas. But I've been having a lot of discussions, and this is spurting from the Kavanaugh hearing, from Justice Kavanaugh, and the idea that hashtag believe her, I believe her, hashtag women or all rape allegations are true, hashtag this, that, and the other. So I wanted to get into this. And before we really dive down into this topic, before we get into this discussion, I really want to make it clear. Rape is horrible. Rape is repugnant. Rapists deserve a super long sentence. I'm talking like borderline life, being castrated. People who are found guilty of rape deserve like atrocious sentencing for their actions. Absolutely 100%, right? Sexual assault, same thing, right? If you are aggressing against somebody else, yes, 100%, I am on your side. Those people need to be rewarded for their decisions. Reward is synonymous with punishment, is just you're being rewarded for your actions, for the actions you decided. And I think in that context, right, I think that reward is a much more fulfilling, much more fitting thing, because you can be punished for things that aren't necessarily your decision or your actions, but reward is always is. So when it comes to the hashtag believe all allegations, hashtag I believe her, here's the issue, right, is that there are studies out there saying that over 99% of, or 98% of allegations are true allegations, because they could only prove 2% of them being false. Now, the problem with the way that this statistic is collected and applied is that the 2% that are false allegations are allegations that were proven to be false. There's a huge spectrum of allegations that are just not provable, and so the question becomes, was it a false allegation, or was it just an unprovable, truthful allegation? And so there's that group of things as well. So the number of 2% is actually a larger number than what's being projected, than what's being espoused. And people that are espousing this should really go and look, instead of just utilizing these talking points, they should actually go out there and actually figure out why it is that these numbers are projected in the way that they are. So those numbers are larger. While we're talking about numbers being larger than what they are, a lot of people are the idea that the rape cases that are proven, right? There are obviously more rape cases that happen. There are more sexual assaults that happen than would have been proven, than would have been tried, and everything else. If we want to actually fix this society, if we want to make our society better, if we want to actually make a change and help end a hashtag rape culture, although I don't really believe we have a rape culture, if we want to end that idea, that stigma that we have, that a lot of people have about this country, then here's what we need to do. We need to find a way in order to encourage anyone and everyone who is a victim to come out and speak out as quickly as possible and as loud as possible. Go talk to the authorities. Go talk to people surrounding there. Go talk to anyone and everyone. You need to get that out. I know that it's hard. I know that it's painful. I know that it's a struggle in order to relive the situation in which you didn't want to live in the first place. But by you going out and pushing and saying, I'm not going to let people deter me from talking about it. I'm not going to let people tell me, nah, don't ruin his life, or he was a good guy and he just messed up. Don't allow that to be a way of stopping you from seeking justice. You were wronged, you were a victim, and you should be going out and speaking out about it. If you go to the police and the police say, we're not interested in hearing this case, then you go up the chain of command and you get a lawyer. You go up the chain of command and you say, this person refuses to do their job. Their whole entire purpose is to protect and serve, and I put that in quotes just like they have on their car, and they're failing to do so. And so we have to fight this, right? This has to be fought. We have to encourage everyone to come out and speak, like I said. And when people do speak out, oftentimes questions are asked in order to verify the situation. And oftentimes what people say is when you ask questions in order to verify, then you're obviously making it more detrimental for the person. You're causing more trauma, as if that was the purpose of asking these questions. What we are doing is we live in a society that is supposed to be somewhat civilized, and with that, there's supposed to be a presumption of innocence. Stefan, welcome in, man. The presumption of innocence is important. I didn't see that they torched his truck for a Trump sticker. So what does presumption of innocence mean? Why is presumption of innocence important? So if we had a presumption of guilt, which is what a lot of people want to advocate for, if there's an allegation, because statistically speaking, most allegations are deemed as honest allegations, if we just deem them all as correct, what happens? Somebody comes out and says, I was raped. Now we have destroyed somebody's life. Because merely there's an allegation, we have a presumption of guilt. Now, if we have a presumption of innocence, what happens is when somebody steps out and says, I was raped. Now we go, how? When? Where? Who was there? Who do you have as a witness? Tell me the story. And so what happens is they go out and they try and corroborate the story. And by corroborating the story, by asking witnesses, by having other people verify what you're saying is true, you know you're not destroying somebody's life that didn't deserve it. No, it's Stefan. The new mic is actually running for both YouTube and Periscope. So right now I'm actually streaming, so you can see my little logo there. I'm actually streaming through the computer on both platforms now. I'm actually utilizing. Yes, my wife made a wonderful logo. So I'm actually streaming through OBS to Restream and Restream to you. So we're actually running with the mic on both of them. So I'll give you a quick peek on it. Bam! Look at that beautiful thing. Roll that beautiful bean footage. Actually, I don't know if I went down far enough. Yeah, there we go. So there we go. All right, and so the presumption of innocence is very important. So we can't just trust that people are going to make honest allegations every time. It's not that we don't want to trust them. It's one that we want to verify. We want to verify. Trust but verify. And it's this idea that's so important to our culture, that's so important to every allegation, regardless of its nature, right? Somebody stole $1,000 from me. Do you have proof of it? No, I don't have proof of it. Well, then obviously they didn't steal it, right? There has to be evidence of this. So we should be encouraging people to come out and speak out as quickly and as loudly as possible. That enables more evidence to be collected easier. That allows witnesses to have it fresh in their mind. Also, if you're ever involved with a tragic event, a crisis, a rape, a murder, anything else like that, if you witness something or you're involved with something, you're a victim of something, the best thing that you can ever do is record it all as quickly as possible. Whether you take out your phone and you record a quick video, you write yourself a text message, you take out a pen and paper and you jot it down as many notes as you can, whatever it is that you can collect, that's only going to help you in the long run. Whether you write that down that day and then 10 years later, 5 years later, 1 year, month later, 1 week later, whenever it is that you go out and you talk about this story, you're actually making it easier for your story to be corroborated, because you actually have things that were written down. And there's a I don't know what to call it. It's basically like with the way that evidence is collected during these hearings, is that it has to be proven that it was written at that time. And so when you do things on your phone, right, you'll have the timestamp. You'll have ways that that's recorded in that manner. And so that's something that's going to help you out. So go out, speak out loudly, speak out quickly, record everything that you can as soon as you can, and don't allow no to be enough. Don't stop. Don't let a justice go unheard because somebody told you no. Keep fighting. Fight for yourself. You should believe in yourself more than that. Don't let people say, "Oh, it's your fault. Oh, why were you here? Why were you there?" Don't you know that's a bad area? Don't you know that it's not safe for you to do that?
That's what you were wearing.
Yeah, that's what you were wearing. It's not about that. It's not. It doesn't matter, right? We should be living in a society in which people don't do that. Now, obviously, we have a lot of monsters in this society. We have monsters out there that want to prey on women, that want to prey on men. And so you have to be able to defend yourself, Second Amendment. You have to be able to get justice. And thankfully, we have a society that enables that. And that is... So we have to encourage people to come out and speak out and do the right thing. That doesn't mean that it's going to bode well for the other person. That doesn't mean that you're not going to destroy someone's life. They decided to destroy your life or attempt to destroy your life. It is not unruly. It is not unfair. It is not anything wrong with you destroying their life for the crimes that they committed against you. Now, with that being said, of course, if you make a false accusation, if you make a false allegation against somebody, if you knowingly accuse somebody and it wasn't them, then obviously I think that we can all agree that if you're going to try and drag someone's name through the mud, maybe, just maybe, there should be some repercussions for or reward for your decisions as well. Yeah. Bush's baked beans. Some people would prefer to wait 35 years. Yeah, some people do prefer to wait the 35 years. I as long as you're going, as long as you're getting it out there. That's what's important, I guess. And even on that, right? So I know that we talked a lot about Dr. Ford and her allegation before, but I think that this should be a teaching point for a lot of people. If you believe Dr. Ford, that's fine. You can believe Dr. Ford. The problem was that because there's a presumption of innocence, her case, her story was not being able to be corroborated. And because it's not able to be corroborated, you can't make him guilty of it. So now that he's on there, we have Democrats that are trying to find other ways to remove civility and to ensure that they are not in any way raising the standard of conduct, raising the bar on the conduct. It's Dr. Ford. If her story is absolutely true and it was Judge Kavanaugh, she did the worst thing that she could have done. She didn't talk about it for 30 years. She didn't talk about it for 30 years. And then she decides to come out and talk about it to her therapist. And during her therapist, she didn't even drop his name. And then the only person that was willing to corroborate that was her husband after the fact. And he said, yeah, she said something about Brett Kavanaugh. But he wasn't absolutely positive that it happened during that during the discussion around the sexual assault. So she didn't talk about it for forever. She had it could be viewed as a somewhat of a memory lapse. The only two things that she could remember for sure was that, or the three things, I guess, was Mark Judge, was Brett Kavanaugh, and that she had one beer. It's the selective memory on that definitely does put a lot of questions into people's minds. And so her entire situation just seemed to not pass the smell test. And if she really wanted it to work, and it was an honest portrayal of what happened, then she really should have done it at a quicker time. She should have done it earlier on. She knew that he was a federal judge. She knew that he was a judge. She knew that he was somebody of importance and was affecting the lives of Americans. And she didn't do anything. So it's perplexing that she would come out at the time that she did. I still don't really know how to look at that entire situation. I'm glad that Justice Kavanaugh was nominated or was pushed through despite that allegation, because the allegation was uncorroborated. I'm glad that there was still some level of presumption of innocence in this country, but we can see that is going away.
They should be here any minute.
Yeah, it is unbalanced. So it's, when it comes to sexual assault and stuff like that, obviously these allegations are serious. Obviously these allegations are destructive in nature, and they require an extreme level of scrutiny. They require us to look at them and scrutinize every little bit of it, because if we just accept them at face value, we destroy innocent people's lives. There's the opportunity that happens, and I don't want to live in a society where that's acceptable, because if we accept that as a standard, then that standard can be applied to you. Could you imagine somebody making an accusation against yourself, against your sister, your brother, your father, your whoever it is, and being able to destroy your life just on a mere allegation? Of course not. I think that we can all accept and understand that the presumption of innocence is important for us. We live in a time when smacking a butt in high school is sexual assault. It cheapens the accusation to include more actions that qualify. Absolutely agree with you. So that's another big important point. And I think this will be my last point, and then we'll have to hop off for the night. That is that the lines in which determine what a rape is, what an attempted rape, what a sexual assault is, an attempted sexual assault is, these lines are being blurred and they're being expanded, and so more things are being accepted into them. I was recently watching a YouTube video in which a woman said, look, I got drunk, I had sex with a man, and I woke up, and then I regretted it, and so it was rape. Can we accept as a society that that's not rape? Just because you did something drunk and you consented while drunk, that doesn't mean that you get to regret it later and then now call rape? Can we accept that? Is that like should that be like a standard? That should be like a terms and condition when you come out of the womb? Hey, accept this, done. I find it really disparaging when people think that that's a tolerable way to live. I can just decide after the fact that somebody did something so egregious, reprehensible, repugnant against me, when in the moment, at the time, I was completely accepting and consenting. I don't remember where it was, but I was also listening, or which podcast it was, but I was listening to a podcast, and a woman was talking about oh wow, it just blanked on me again. I'm sorry, I lost that one. I'll have to go read through or listen to a couple of podcasts from the other day. But it was basically like a woman had decided to do something, and then, oh, that's what it was. So a woman filed for rape, and during the interview, during the interrogation, if you will, during the questioning, the line of questioning came up and said, what was done? Well, he touched me over my clothes and under my clothes. He touched my butt and he touched my breasts. Okay, so if there was no consent there, yes, that's sexual assault. Okay, we can agree with that. Was there anything else that had happened? Well, I was also touching him. I touched his penis outside and inside of his pants. So you guys were getting involved sexually? Yes. And you never said no. No. How is it rape? How is that rape? It's not rape. So we have this it really is just another form of postmodernism, right? A rewriting of history. And saying, I don't like the way the outcome was. I don't like the actions. And so I get to change a huge portion of it and say I didn't consent. That's causing uncivil, or that's causing destruction in our society. And we don't denounce that enough. It needs to be shut down. It needs to be stopped. When people make accusations like that, we have to destroy. We have to destroy of that notion. And the people making those accusations should be punished for it. So with that, guys, I'm gonna leave you guys. I appreciate you guys all for joining in. Remember, rape, sexual assault, sexual misconduct, aggressing against a person who doesn't consent with the way that you're aggressing against them, is all horrible, tragic, disgusting things, and it should always be denounced. So thank you guys all for joining in, and it's Friday night, so do not drink and drive or ride with those who do. You have family and friends who care about you and love you deeply, and they want to make sure that you get back here Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. So I hope you guys all have a great weekend, and I'll see you guys at Sunday, 7 p.m. I am Mr. Murica, the Bearded Truth, Jason Lyon. Have a great night and enjoy your weekend.